Hey everyone, Josh here. I'm going to give you guys my 15 worst picks of 2023. I know a lot of people are saying, stop it with these negative worst of the year lists, but I think it's fair to point out the most flawed films, so hopefully in the future we can avoid these same mistakes. In going through my ranking of everything I've seen this year on Letterboxd, there are a couple that I'm shocked aren't going to make the list. The Marvels and Silent Night both narrowly missed it, but whatever, we're just going to briefly touch on the 15 that I think are somehow worse than those two. Kicking things off with number 15 is Haunted Mansion. This movie was just shockingly dreary at times, particularly with Lakeith Stanfield's character and the storyline behind his dead wife. Like, this is a kid's movie. Let's keep it fun. Let's keep it light. It does nothing fun with the horror elements. I was hoping it would be sort of an enjoyable gateway horror experience. There's nothing specifically in it that I remember as being abhorrent, but really, I don't remember much from it at all, and that says a lot. Number 14 is 65. I don't know how you waste a movie with Adam Driver and dinosaurs, but somehow they did it here. This is a boring 90-minute sci-fi flick that has some interesting ideas that are very poorly explored, a lot of logistical issues. It does have some The Last of Us vibes, particularly with Adam Driver being with this young girl, but there's a language barrier, so they can't understand each other through 90% of it, which makes things even more boring. I enjoyed the dinosaur stuff, but it's still a huge miss. Number 13 is Five Nights at Freddy's. This is, visually speaking, very faithful to the video games, but story-wise, it's all over the place. It goes off on random tangents 24/7, whether we're talking about this weird dream stuff with Josh Hutcherson trying to figure out that his brother's disappearance in the past. They made the animatronics too friendly to the point that they're not scary anymore. This movie lacks the guts to have any blood to it to be genuinely scary, but it's also not very fun and campy until that third act that is very audacious, but I just don't care for it. Logic issues everywhere too, especially with that cop character. Could not stand her. In fact, a lot of the characters in this are just flat out annoying. Number 12 is Next Goal Wins. This one just makes me sad. I don't know why Taika Waititi's humor just doesn't work for me anymore. Ever since Thor Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, he lost that quirky fun essence that he had, and now he's just quirky and annoying. And this is pretty much your typical underdog story, but there's no team dynamic. You don't get to really know any of the players. It's just about Michael Fassbender learning to be less of a dick. And most underdog stories have that one moment where everybody comes together and it's just really, it has a feel-good vibe to it. This doesn't have that. It has the most cliche story overall that you can possibly think of. And the fact of the matter is, I just didn't find it funny whatsoever. Number 11 is The Exorcist Believer. Now, I actually thought this started out pretty interesting with it just being a missing persons movie, and it gets you into this protagonist who you genuinely care about. And then from there, it just nosedives, whether we're talking about the fact that they bring Ellen Bernstein back in this for no reason other than to destroy her character. Why would you do that, David Gordon Green? What were you thinking, man? From there, it's not scary at all. It's pretty much just a rehash of the first film with two girls instead. And he does go for those William Friedkin visuals at times, and it doesn't work. The third act is awful with some really horrible special effects, bad dialogue, this overly cheesy team-up Avengers style of priests and people from different religions teaming up to take on these demons. Really awful way to end the movie. Number 10 is Mafia Mama. Now, I dislike this a lot more than I did the first time I watched it. When I first watched it, I was like, it's whatever. But the more I think about it, the more I hate this one. It comes to us from the director of Twilight, and it's basically just a spoof of The Godfather. And admittedly, it has a few funny scenes. The rest, unfortunately, is just Toni Collette desperately trying to make the awful dialogue work. And it doesn't. Most of the jokes just aren't funny, and above all else, it annoyed me. Number 9 is Wish, Disney's newest movie that somehow takes a lot of elements from their more classic films and waters them down to their most superficial states. It's totally boring, lacks any good character development, it's not funny, the songs suck, the visuals are serviceable at best, and somehow it fails to utilize this concept that could be really interesting, this villain that hogs everyone's wishes and only grants the ones that he wants to. Again, an absolute nothing burger of a movie that is already starting to leave my subconscious because it was so forgettable. Number 8 is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This is the nothing burger superhero movie of the year that accomplishes next to nothing other than dismantling everything that made the first film work. The main character, Billy, is growing older now, so when he acts all childish as the Shazam persona, it doesn't feel like it matches anymore. He's more mature in his regular human form. The villains are piss poor, the family dynamic is not nearly as strong as it was in the first one. It has a few laughs here and there, but ultimately it's disposable in every conceivable way. Also, I hated the ending. How cheesy and stupid of them to fake his death and then have Wonder Woman come back and resurrect him. I don't even remember if that's exactly what happened, but it was something like that. Number 7 is Ghosted, an action rom-com that feels like it was written by AI. That's really the best way I can describe it. Ana de Armas and Chris Evans provide the A-list eye candy that I'm looking for, but man, the action is so terrible. The story is absolute nonsense. and the dialogue is horrible. If not for that star power, it would probably be even lower. Number 6 is The Nun 2. I have no idea why people think this is better than the first one. I didn't like the first one, but at least that one had the cool Romanian visuals and some cool green foggy atmosphere. The only leg up this one has over the first one, in my opinion, is Storm Reid, who is a genuinely good actress, but everything else feels like a complete rehash of the first one. It's not scary in the slightest. The later Conjuring movies in this universe at this point are all becoming a blur. They have the exact same plot down to the specific details. Number 5 is Marlo. This one actually excited me a little bit because I like to see Liam Neeson take on some new roles, different than the, typical Taken role that he's always in. And despite having some cool visuals, this film is boring. It's horribly boring. It's just Liam Neeson going from location to location, asking characters if they know so-and-so, if they know what happened to this person or that person. And it's so plotting. It has nothing to accomplish. Number 4 is Meg 2, The Trench. To all the people saying to just lighten up and enjoy this for what it is, that being lighthearted, dumb fun, I would be willing to do that if this movie is accurate to that description, which it's not. I would happily go and watch 90 minutes of Jason Statham fighting giant sharks, but that's really just the last 10 minutes of this. The rest of it is about this illegal mining operation at the bottom of the ocean. Most of it is human conflict. There's very little giant sharks. In fact, they try to bring in a lot of other creatures in this that emerge from the trench, including these big amphibious creatures. The special effects are awful, and there's no reason to watch this. I already didn't like the first one, and this one's even worse. Number 3 is The Mother. Netflix, please stop making these terribly boring action flicks. Red Notice was bad enough, but at least that one had the charm of The Rock and Ryan Reynolds. This one, not only is it poorly directed with awful action sequences, but it also stars J-Lo. A lot of misplaced needle drops in there too. Netflix just keeps making these movies thinking they're so much cooler than they actually are. I suppose there was potential in here for an interesting mother-daughter dynamic, but both characters just annoyed the living hell out of me. Number 2 is Consecration. There actually are a couple of other indie horror films that I considered putting on this list, but I omitted them because it just feels wrong to go after indie filmmakers. But this one was bad enough that I had to throw it on here. I like Jenna Malone, and she's about the only saving grace of this. It's just your average slice of religious horror, and I think it's the worst subgenre within horror. There's nothing original they can do with this stuff. Honestly, I don't even remember much of the story of this one, and I don't care to go back and look at my review of it. But it's the kind of movie where 40-minute stretch will go by and nothing relevant to the plot happens at all. It's a lot of characters walking through scenic locations very slowly. Maybe they see something creepy at the end, but avoid this one at all costs. Number 1 might be a bit of a hot take, but my least favorite film of 2023 is Netflix's Heart of Stone. Wow, look at that. They've got 2 action films on my worst of the year list. This is just a painfully generic Mission Impossible ripoff. Shame it had to come out right after Dead Reckoning, because that makes it look even worse considering it has the AI plot right down to the details. And you can just tell they were trying to ape the team dynamic that the MI films have. When I watched the trailer for it, I was like, yeah, it looks pretty generic and dumb, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad. Not only was I bored within the first half hour, but the action sequences feel shoehorned in and contrived. None of them feel like they naturally fit what's happening story-wise. The special effects are pretty awful. And let's talk about Gal Gadot and Jamie Dornan for a second. They are totally phoning it in. Maybe I was just in a bad mood when I saw it or something, but I was fighting the urge to doze off through this entire movie. So it has to be number 1 as the worst film I have seen in 2023. That's gonna be it for this one. I didn't want it to be super long and didn't want to set up my camera and everything. Just wanted to give you guys my 15 worst. And be sure to let me know in the comments too, what is the worst film in 2023 for you? I can't wait to see what 2024 has in store for us, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you later.